All right, today we are going to talk about chapter 6. Chapter 6, which is, in the grand scheme of things, it's decimals, percents, and fractions, converting from one to the other. Okay, you guys have all done that before. We're going to make sure that we understand the process of it. So that's your first page, is your note page. You should have a note page like that on the front, correct? So flip to that note page. Go ahead and shut your Chromebooks, and we're just going to go over these and just write how we would convert this. If some of you at one point I had a poster how to convert that. It's all been taken down now. If you want to create a poster using these things, that's something I can give an extra credit on as far as the conversion aspect. The first thing we're going to talk about is we're going to go from percent. So you can write this one in that top one to decimal. We're going to spend a little time on writing this out because I feel it's important to kind of understand the process. All right, so how do you convert decimal to percent? Or percent to decimal, excuse me. Percent to decimal. So you have a decimal, let's say, 75%. How do we convert that to a decimal? Yes. So what did you do there? Moved it to the what? What do you mean by back? Move decimal to the left 2 spots. Or we'll say 2 places is better. That's a better word. It's the same thing as what? Divide by what? Yes. So either 1 or divide by 100. That's ultimately what you're doing when you convert a percent to decimal. So 75%, the answer is what? 0.75. How about 2.5%? What is that? What was it? 0.025. Go back 2 spots. And then finally, how about what's 225%? Yes. Correct. Because remember we said anything over 100% is going to be over 1, right? Because 100% is simply 1 as a decimal. Percents to decimals. Okay, do you have that? Understand that one okay? Okay. Anybody have questions? Everybody have it written down? We good? All right. You can hit pause on your video when you're there. Okay. So percent to decimal. You're going to move the decimal to the places to the left. Now, let's go backwards. And let's say now, decimals to percents. Decimals to percents. Now what do you think you're going to do? You're going to get one that works. What's going on here? Decimal to percent. What do you think we're going to do? Caleb. Move the decimal. You're right. 2 places. Or what? Or what? Multiply by 100. Okay? 2 different ways to do that again. Multiply by 100. Now, what's the easier way to do that? Multiply or move the decimal? Move the decimal is probably easier in your mind, but that's what's happening. So, if I have 0.72, what is that as a percent? 72%. How about, what is 1.5? What is 1.5? Yep. Absolutely. 150%. Remember, anything over 1 is over 100%. Okay? So then let's go 0.008. What is that as a percent? Hey, Doug? 0.8%, right? And you can put a 0, or you can just say 0.8, 0.8%. Decimals to percents. All right, now, I'm going to talk about a couple of these. These maybe aren't going to be talked about so much in this particular unit, but I think you need to know. Okay? So now we're going to use, we've had decimals and percents. Let's go percent to fraction. And again, if you make a poster with this, I'll show you an example. I'll get you some extra credit if you spend some time on making it. Have some nice flaps with it and everything. So, what are you doing here? What are percents always out of? What's the highest percent or the max percent? Even though you could go over, but what's it out of? 100. So percents are always out of 100. Right? That's our maximum. That means it's 1 out of 1. We can go over it. Just with extra credit, or somebody says, I gave 110%. Well, okay. But whatever it is, you're going over it. So, you're ultimately going to put the percent, and we're going to say number, over 100 to find the fraction. So when I said 75%, how is that written as a fraction? Yes. 75 over 100. Simplified into what? 3/4. So that's why 3/4 is 75%, which now we know how to do that. So let's look at what is, give me an example here, 250%. How do we write that as a fraction? No. 250, we already said, is always over what? 100. What's that simplify to? Yes? 2.5. Right? Because we ultimately, well, wait, just let's look at this. 25 over 10 simplified, which is 2.5 or 2.5. 250% is like over 1, so it's 250. Let's look at our last one here. What's 0.7% as a fraction? Ooh. Ooh. 7 over 1,000, because 7% is 7 over 100. 0.7% is 7 over 1,000. So if you've got a 0.7% chance of winning, you got 7 out of 1,000. So there's like 1,000 people maybe in this school with students, teachers, faculty, and staff. Close to that. And you got 1 in 1,000 chance of getting your name drawn, which is a 0.1%. You look at the lottery, it's like 0.0000000 something. Like that Powerball the other day, that one that was worth almost $1 billion. You got a chance of getting lightning struck twice, or being in a pool with something with a big old thing of sand and finding your grain of sand over. I mean, it was just unbelievable, the odds. Now, if you won, it'd been really good. Okay, you wouldn't have had to work probably ever again, nor were your kids, your grandkids, and maybe your great grandkids. That's what you call multiple generation winnings. Okay, so that's percent to fraction. You take the percent and you divide it by 100. All right. Now let's go. These are all conversions going back and forth. Now we haven't done one. Let's go. Fractions to decimals. Fractions to decimals. How do you do a fraction to decimal? So a fraction being 3 over 5. How do you do that? What do you do? Yes?
You have to get the bottom to 100 and multiply the numerator by the numerator.
Or you divide the what? Numerator by the So, what are we going to do there? Which is actually the top divided by the bottom, correct? So what are you doing there? Take what? Take what?
3 divided by 5.
And you get 0. And what? 6. So, this is something you put in your calculator. So now let's look at that. 3/5 is what as a decimal? 0.6. What is that as a percent? We just did it. You had to go what? Twice. So what percent is that? What's that?
60%.
60%. So if you score 3 out of 5 on a test, that's 60%. That's probably not good. Now, if you made 3 out of 5 3-pointers, that's good. So it's all relative of what 60% is. Is it good in math? Not so good. Is it good at shooting half-court shots? Yes. Is it good at shooting from 150 yards away and bow and arrow into the target? Absolutely. But whatever it is, that's all relative. But that's how you find it. You divide 5 into 3, you get your decimal, and that's how you convert to percent. So, any questions on that? Last one, let's go decimals to fractions. Decimals to fractions. Anybody got it? How are we going to do that? Anybody? I feel like Doc on Back to the Future.
Oh my God, they're so good. It's so weird. So Albert Einstein was
Alright. You guys are fine back home. Nothing's happened here. Alright, let's go. Yes! Correct. So you have your decimal at, let's say, put decimal number, and I say the number is what it is, over 100. So 0.2, what is that as a decimal? And remember, it's to the hundredths, right? Or to the tenths. Over the decimal placement. Remember, tens, hundreds, thousands. Tenths, hundreds, thousands. So 0.2 is going to be what? 2 over, what's that? 2 over 10. How about 0.56? What is that? 56 over 100. Now, that could be simplified. What is 56 over 100 as a percent?
6%.
What? 56%, right? Ooh, what's that one? What's that percent? 2 over 10.
20%.
How'd you get that?
I multiplied both numerator and denominator by 10 to get the bottom to 100.
Or you could say what? If I wanted to put it in the hundreds column,
Just add
add
a 0.
a 0, right? And you get 20%. Conversion. A lot there in 15 minutes. But that's what we're going to do, okay? Is converting that. Particularly today, we are working with percents as decimals and decimals as percents. Those first two we talked about. But I think it's important to understand the fraction aspect of it too, because if we don't, then we're gonna have major issues. Okay? So, go ahead and flip to the 6.1 reteach. 6.1 reteach. It talks about what we just did there, and they use the grid sheets that you did back in kind of elementary school. But we're going to do this. We're going to do a few of these. You'll do some practice problems tomorrow. I'll probably have you do, or on Monday, excuse me, or the next day. Little big ideas, and maybe on Excel we'll see kind of where we land there. 63%. Write that as a percent or a decimal based on what we have. You don't have to use a model. So what's that? 63% written as a decimal is what?
6.3.
Go 2 spots.
0.63.
There you go. 0.31 is a percent. Go 2 spots. 31%. How about 89% as a decimal? 0.89. Ooh, 0.05 as a percent. Nothing changed, there's a decimal in it. Go 2 spots, what percent is that? What? Yeah, because and you can also look at it as a decimal, that's 5 over 100, right? Well, anything over 100, that's, you can go percents. How about this one? .4 as a decimal.
4.84.
Correct. Going percent to decimal, you're going to go down. Decimal to percent, you're going to go up. Okay? Because decimals are lower. Decimals are going to be 1 or under it for your 100%. How about this one? This one has a percent.
6.
Yeah.
It's 94.9%.
94.9%. Like some of your grades in here. Hopefully nobody has this number as a grade. 7. 55%. What do you got there? L?
0.95.
Yeah, 0.55. You can say 0.55. A lot of you guys were trained to say the 0 first. I was trained not to say the 0 first, so it's kind of why it's different. Number 8. What's that as a percent? 1%. Which is actually, if we did it as a fraction, remember? 1 over 100, right? 'Cause it's in the 100 spot. Remember, everything over 100, that's putting you right in perspective of a percent. Okay, percents are always out of 100. That 100 is the bottom number. That is the most important part that you're going to learn this chapter when we start doing percent proportions, discounts, markups. You're going to find out how to shop well, and sometimes how businesses want to say it's really thin, sounds like it's pretty cheap, 40% off, and it's not really that much, or it can be depending. All right, write the fraction as a decimal and a percent. Ooh, I'm gonna get a little more tough here. What do we got here? How are we gonna get this as a percent first? Yes. You could to get that to a decimal. What could you do first? What do we know percents are out of? 100. How are we going to get 9/50ths to that? Yeah. Let me get this a little larger there. So you're going to multiply by 2. So now you have what over 100? 18. How do you write 18 over 100 as a percent? 18%. Ooh, 10. Now, you're going to be able to use calculators. If you put that in a calculator, and that's repeating. So what percent would that be? Simply what? Go over to what? 45%. Now, if I said round to the nearest percent, what would you tell me? What? Does a 5 bump the 4 to a 5? And the 5 bumps this to a what? It'd be 46%. That's where it's depends on what you are actually rounding to, and what are you actually like. Are you even going to the tenths and then rounding up? But either one I would take. How about number 11? The trick with the 9 and lower than 9 division. Like 2/9 is 0.222. 3/9, 0.3333, like it's 1/3. 4/9 would be what? 0.4444, if you ever put it in the calculator. So what's 0.222? What is that as a percent? Yes.
It's 22.22.
Or just 22. You could go, if I said go to the hundreds, if I said go to the nearest percent, you would just say 22%. Let's look at 16. What would you do on 16? Yes. Yes, multiply 20 by 5 to get that 100, right? So now you get what is the fraction? And then what percent is that?
35%.
There you go. Last, let's do 15. Does anybody know that off the top of their head what 2/5 is?
So first you have to multiply by 20.
Okay.
And then you get 100 over 40.
Or 40 over 100, yeah.
And then you have 40%.
Yep. And what is that as a decimal?
0.40.
0.4, right? Just like this is a decimal is what?
0.35.
0.35. Okay. Questions? All right, your assignment today, you are going to do 1 through 32 evens. So it's on the back, I think, that first page. On the back of that note page. 6.1 practice A. Or do you have extra practice? Yours extra practice? Okay.
So only the even numbers? Or all of them?
Let me look at that again. Okay, yeah. Let's go. What's it? Let's go. One through 24 even, and then do 26 through 30. You got the rest of the time today, 15 minutes. I got calculators to help you. So that's what we'll do.
Do you want us to do the evens on just 26 and 30 or all of them?
Do all of them on 26 and 30.
Okay, so
1 through 24 evens. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24. And then do 26 through 30, all of them.